we are going to build the ultimate guide for diagnosing brake pull, just like a master tech would teach a new apprentice. We'll break down everything, the physics, the hardware, and all the hidden clues that lead you to the right diagnosis every single time.
So you hit the brakes and the car wants to pull to one side. Look, this is way more than just a little annoyance. It's a serious safety issue. In a real emergency stop, that pull could be the difference between staying in your lane and, well, disaster. So we're not going to guess. We're going to solve this thing systematically from the ground up. Okay, first things first. Let's really get our heads around what's happening when you feel that tug on the steering wheel. Because brake pull isn't just some vague feeling. It's pure physics. It's a clear signal that the forces acting on your car are seriously out of whack.
Right. The fancy term for this is a yaw moment. All that means is there's a rotational force trying to pivot your car. It's pulling you toward the wheel that has the stronger braking force. And you know what? It doesn't take much. Even a tiny 10% difference in braking power from one side to the other is more than enough for you to feel a very real pull.
And it all comes down to this fundamental principle, Pascal's law. It's the absolute heart of your brake system. See, in a perfect world, the pressure you create with your foot on the pedal travels through that brake fluid and shows up perfectly equal at every single wheel. Our entire job here is to figure out where and why that perfect balance is failing.
You know, the classic rookie mistake is to just start tearing the brakes apart right away. But a pro? A pro always starts with the easiest and most common culprits first. Seriously, this quick 2-minute check can solve a surprising number of these cases and save you hours of work.
First up, tire pressures. It sounds too simple, but a low tire on one side creates more drag, a bigger contact patch, and it'll cause a pull to that side. So check them and equalize them. Then, make sure the tires on that axle actually match. Same size, similar wear. A new tire isn't going to grip the same way a bald one does. And finally, just take a quick look. Any obvious fluid leaks dripping from the calipers or hoses?
Okay, so if those simple checks come up empty, it's time to get the car in the air. Because more often than not, the real reason for that brake pull is hiding right here, in the mechanical hardware at the wheel.
Now, listen up, because this is the big one. Most cars out there use what are called floating calipers. And for them to work, they have to, well, float. They slide on these little lubricated pins to apply even pressure to both brake pads. But when those pins get all gunked up with rust and old grease and they seize up, the whole system goes sideways, and you can lose up to 50% of your braking force on that wheel. And what's really fascinating here is the physics of it. A seized pin means the caliper can't move, so only the inner brake pad gets the full hydraulic force from the piston. The outer pad, it barely even makes contact. This creates a huge braking imbalance. And here's the kicker. The car will actually pull to the opposite side, the side where the brake is still working properly.
Next, let's look at the rotor itself. We're not just worried about a warped rotor. We're looking for something much more subtle called disc thickness variation, or DTV. That's just when the rotor surface has worn unevenly as it spins.
And this just shows you the insane precision we're dealing with in a brake system. A variation of just 50 microns, that is literally less than the thickness of a human hair, is enough to make the caliper piston pulse in and out as the wheel rotates. That creates a rhythmic force that you feel as a pulsing pull in the steering wheel. All right, if all the hardware at the wheel looks good, our problem is probably hiding upstream in the hydraulic system, and this is where we find one of the sneakiest, most misdiagnosed causes of brake pull, one that can fool even a seasoned tech.
And this is it, the collapsed brake hose. See, these hoses fail from the inside out. The inner liner can start to peel away and basically create a little flap. So high-pressure fluid gets in just fine to apply the brake, but when you let off the pedal, that flap closes and traps the fluid inside the caliper. And now, that brake is constantly dragging.
But you know, sometimes the problem is the fluid itself. Brake fluid is hygroscopic. It's a fancy word, but all it means is that it loves to absorb water. Over the years, it literally pulls moisture right out of the air. And water, well, water is the absolute enemy of hydraulic pressure.
Just look at that drop. After only a couple of years of service, that water contamination can cause the fluid's boiling point to absolutely plummet. So, you brake hard, the fluid on one side gets hot and starts to boil. That creates vapor bubbles. And here's the problem. Vapor compresses, liquid doesn't. So you lose hydraulic pressure on that hot side, and the car pulls toward the opposite side where the fluid is still firm.
So what if you've checked everything and you still haven't found the pull?
Well, this is where a master tech really earns their keep. It's time to start looking beyond the brake system itself, at two of the most overlooked areas: suspension geometry and the vehicle's electronics.
Let's talk about caster. That's the forward or backward tilt of the steering axis. Now, if the caster is different from one side to the other, the car might actually drive perfectly straight down the road. But the second you hit the brakes and the front end dives, those unequal angles create unequal forces, and that will cause a pull to the side with less positive caster.
This is exactly what a tech is looking at on a modern alignment machine. The most you can have for a side-to-side difference is just half a degree. Anything more than that, like you see here, is a guaranteed pull when you brake. It's often caused by something like a worn-out bushing or even some old hidden collision damage. And finally, never ever forget about the brains of the operation. A faulty ABS sensor can trick the system into thinking a wheel is about to lock up. So what does the computer do? It preemptively reduces pressure to that wheel, creating a pull that has no mechanical cause at all. The really sneaky one is a solenoid that's just partially stuck because it might not even throw a trouble code.
So, we've gone down the rabbit hole. We followed the diagnostic funnel all the way from simple tires to complex electronics. Now, let's talk about the tools that take you from a good hunch to a dead certain diagnosis.
Look, these are the tools that separate the pros from the part swappers. They let a master tech measure, not guess. You can physically see pressure differences in real time. You can measure rotor runout down to a single micron. And you can check every single suspension angle with total precision.
But you want to know the real game changer in a modern shop? It's thermal imaging. After a couple of hard test stops, you point this camera at the brakes. The side that's dragging, or just working way too hard, is going to be glowing. A temperature difference of 40 degrees Celsius or more, that's your smoking gun. It instantly points you to the source of the imbalance. So if you take one thing away from all of this, let it be this: follow the process. This diagnostic funnel, from tires to the mechanicals to the hydraulics and finally to geometry, it saves time, it prevents you from making the wrong call, and it guarantees you find the actual root cause, not just a symptom.
You know, brake pull is so fascinating because it forces you to see how all these different complex systems are connected. When you understand how fluid, hardware, and geometry all talk to each other, you can diagnose almost anything. So, what do you think? What's the next great diagnostic puzzle that's hiding in plain sight? Thanks for watching.